Hello, YouTube. How are you? My name's Jude, and today we have a special video. We got a collab with Artem MMA here to do my UFC Fight Night Baku picks, Fiziev versus Torres. Um, we're just gonna get straight into this one. I'm not really gonna recap the last Apex card. I was just devastated to see Horiguchi lose and to get my third main event wrong in a row. So we need a bounce back here. I went 8 for 12 total on the card, but we're slipping quickly down the Tapology rankings. So bit of a losing streak here, but we're gonna get into the card. Our first fight on the card, we have Tahir Abdullayev versus Jefferson Nascimento. And I don't want to be like disrespectful when I say this, but to me, this is like a Dana White's Contender Series fight where neither guy would get signed. Um, I just don't think this is a very good fight. Um, Watching the tape for both guys, I wasn't impressed. In Nascimento's last fight against Gian Morante, if that was a 3 round fight, he would have lost pretty clearly. And then he kind of just pulled one out of the hat and got a fourth round TKO with one body kick. So I mean that was kind of impressive. He does have the flashy record, 13-0, and then I feel like that's why most people are picking him. But he's moving up a weight class here. I honestly don't even think he's a big lightweight. And Abdullayev isn't a big welterweight. Like he's a natural welterweight, but not really. Like he should be fighting out lightweight. And then Nascimento, I honestly think could probably make featherweight. Um, I don't really know. I don't really like what I've seen from either guy. Abdullayev, um, watched him lose to Josh Togo. I watched him lose this fight, and then there was that one other fight where he beat the guy who was 8-0, but he had 2 points deducted for grabbing the cage. And then since then he's on a 4 fight win streak in low level Asian promotions here. These are all by first round submission, I believe. No, this one was a ground and pound, but then he's got 3 submissions in a row against low level comp. And Nascimento has been fighting in LFA, but he fought 3 weeks ago in this fight, and he got dropped really badly with that spinning elbow. So I find it pretty hard to believe that he's not going into this one a bit compromised or concussed. Um, but I don't know. You can kind of flip a coin on this one, and I'm just kind of leaning to hear Abdullayev because this will be basically in his backyard, and um, I don't really rate Jefferson Nascimento despite him being 13-0. I don't really rate either guy, like I said, but I just kind of think Abdullayev will be able to bank 2 rounds here. Artem, what do you think?
Yeah, so for this fight, I also didn't like it that much. Now, when it got announced, I was a little bit familiar with Jefferson Nascimento being the LFA champion, but it's kind of like known that he's not as good as his record does suggest. Now, he has had really good performances in his career, but when he's taken that big step up in competition, I don't think he's really showed up. You know, even in his win over Bisingo Makayev, you could argue he lost that fight against Makayev over 5 rounds. Against John Morente, he finished him in the fourth. You could argue he's down 3 rounds to none against Morente, who was fighting the whole fight with his jaw wide open, and that's never a good sign because I just don't like it when fighters do that. And then against Gabriel Costa, like that was a bit of a war, but even then, Costa was so much bigger than him, and that was at 155, and that was years ago. So he's taken time off, he's come back, but even then, I think he's actually looking in better shape than he did in 2023 because I think that photo on Tapology where it looks like he's got a bit more body fat than most like UFC level lightweights, quote unquote, um, would have. But I think he's looking good, but at the same time, he is too small for 155. I do think that if he locked in, he probably could make 145. As for Abdullayev, he's definitely a guy that is a big 5'8" because he is just a tank, as his nickname does suggest. That he just plods forward, he bombs away on the feet, throws a lot of leg kicks. But that win streak he's on right now, I didn't watch all of them because I couldn't find all of them, but I watched a couple of them. And the guy he beat most recently, Dadras, had absolutely no business being in there with him. I don't know how he had 3 wins in the first place. And just in general, the wins that Abdullayev has had recently haven't been good, but he does have good wins in his career overall. The main concern that I have in this matchup for Abdullayev is just going to be the gas tank, I think, even though it is short notice for Nascimento and he did get cuts in that fight. I actually think that for Abdullayev, I think he's going to have to maybe get a finish in this matchup here because I just don't really trust him coming in on short notice to go a long period of time. Whereas for Nascimento, I'd be very surprised if he's cutting weight at all for this fight. And we have seen that he's got good cardio, but I would even argue that Nascimento might be the more skilled fighter out of the two. But I can't see him lose 3 rounds to someone who I don't think is necessarily a good fighter to start with, and then trust him to go out there and then beat someone that I think hits a lot harder than Morente does, is a lot more aggressive than Morente is, and it's going to be very physically imposing in there against him at 170. So I'm going to pick Abdullayev. I actually am going to pick Abdullayev to win the fight by knockout myself, but I don't have confidence in it at all. As you said, I think it's 50-50. I think if someone's picking Nascimento, they have very good reason to do so. Yeah, it's one of those fights which definitely could go either way, and it's a fun one. Don't get me wrong, but it's more of a fun fight than anything super serious. And I would also be surprised, even if Abdullayev does win this fight, which I'm picking him to do so, if he would find a great deal of success at 117 in general. To be honest with you, just given that he's 5'8" at this weight class, but that's my pick there.
Yeah, I don't like that I have to even make a prediction for this fight. Um, I just don't like the fact that Nascimento. I don't like picking guys who have to go up a weight class to make a fight, especially on short notice. I just don't like doing it. It usually doesn't go too well for them. But both of these guys have gone 5 rounds before. Abdullayev did a couple times in UAE Warriors. Um, I just don't really like the finishing upside that I've seen from him, unless he's able to get this one to the mat. I'm leaning on the decision side, but I could see a finish really either way in this one. Um, yeah, that's gonna do it for the first fight.
And then for Bexit Amakan versus Jin Matsumoto, I like the fight. It is two guys I would consider prospects, even though Bexit Amakan has got a losing record in the promotion at the moment. He's still young, he's still good, he's still powerful, and I think he's very fun to watch. He is a very good kickboxer in his own right, but I do think that we have seen so far out of Bexit Amakan that he has struggled a little bit with the takedowns. And I think that John Matsumoto is going to come into this fight with a very takedown heavy game plan. I actually like Matsumoto striking quite a bit, even though that seems to be something that some people don't necessarily like. But I like the high volume. I like the cardio. I like the fact that he can maintain a high volume, especially in the boxing. And then he can offensively wrestle on top of that as well. And I think it's going to be the offensive wrestling in this fight that's just really going to open up things for Matsumoto on the ground, on the feet. He's had close fights in the past where his opponents have found striking success against him, and he's been trying to grind up up against the cage with the wrestling, like against Rob Font even. But I think in this matchup here, I think against Bexit Amakan, I think the takedowns will be enough for Matsumoto. The control will be enough, and I think he is going to win a decision over Almakan. But I think that Almakan, if he was to win, I actually think he would knock out Matsumoto. So the pick is a Matsumoto decision, but I think the finish upside would be on the Almakan side.
Yeah, I'm on the same side in this one. I don't actually mind John Matsumoto striking. I just don't like his head movement. I think if anything were to catch up to him or bite him in this fight, it would be the head movement and Almakan being able to land something early. But really, I think um, if Almakan doesn't get like a round one knockout in this one, I do think Matsumoto will be all right. I thought that Matsumoto won round 2 and 3 against Basharat. He cut within a minute of this fight. Both of these guys kind of cut easy, but Matsumoto especially. Um, but yeah, I do think that the grappling from Matsumoto is a bit underrated. I think he's going to be able to get it going here. I don't think he'll get a lot of control on the ground necessarily, but I don't. I like you said, I think that'll be his primary game plan in this one, and I think it'll be enough to get him 2 rounds. Um, I do think this will be another close fight for Matsumoto because it seems like that's all that he's had in the UFC. He had a close fight. Yeah, it was Dan Argueta up until the submission. Close fight with Katona, close fight with Rob Font that I probably thought that he won. close fight with Miles Johns. I think that one should have been unanimous. But then, like I said, I thought he beat Basharat in the second and third round. Um, yeah, I think it was a pretty good performance against Basharat. Like in terms of the striking, he didn't look um, out of his element there. Like I thought his striking even looked a little bit better than Basharat's in that fight. And for Almacan, I do think he's good, but he does kind of fade, and the wrestling is a weakness of his. He got taken down by Taporia quite a few times. Um, and yeah, that's what ended up costing him that fight. And he bled a lot in that fight as well. So I think the damage will be on both sides here. And I'm just going to lean towards Matsumoto. I think he's a more well-rounded fighter here. Our next fight, we have Daniil Donchenko fighting against Theodore Berggren. Berggren stepping in on short notice for this one. This was supposed to be Donchenko versus Andreas Gustafsson, but Gustafsson had to pull out and subsequently is out of the UFC now because of his heart problems. And I just don't really like this signing. I don't think Theodore Berggren's very good, honestly, from what I've seen. I did not watch a lot of tape on Theodore Berggren, but I didn't really like what I saw. Um, I do just kind of think Donchenko is going to run right through him in this one. If it's not a TKO, which I would be surprised if he doesn't get a TKO here, I think it'll just be a dominant striking performance from him. I don't really see a path to victory for Berggren here. I really don't have much more to say than that. I kind of just think Donchenko is gonna kind of spark him in the first round like he did to Rodrigo Cezinando.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that, to be honest with you. I think that Berggren has a skill set. I think he has the look to him, I guess. He does look like a really like well built, welterweight. He's got the size, he's got the athleticism, he's got the speed. But I think he lacks in the boxing defense quite a lot, even in the wrestling defense. I just think this guy just isn't defensively very sound. In his win, his second most recent win against Bataglia, he was getting backed up. The boxing defense, again, as I said, wasn't looking very good in that matchup. And then his most recent win against Abdulatif Samadov, in that fight, he was getting out wrestled the whole fight, really, and Samadov just death gassed after beating him up, really. So Berggren just sort of cardio merchanted his way to a third round finish in that one there after Samadov failed a takedown. And then even against Damiani, that was a combination of him losing the striking and the wrestling. So it wasn't even just one of the two things. When Donchenko went out there against Alex Morono, if there was a different referee in there, the referee could have stopped the fight. He dropped Morono badly, was hammer fisting Morono on the ground. So he pretty much had Morono finished in that matchup. And I think that in that fight, even against Morono, and I know Morono is a veteran and he's an older fighter, he still looked so fast. He still looked very technical. And I just think in general, kind of lot that I saw out of Donchenko in that fight, if he goes into this matchup against Berggren the same way he went into the fight against Alex Morono and not respect Berggren, I think he's going to close the distance. I don't think he's going to knock him out. And I also think he's going to knock him out in the first round of this fight. And then as for Berggren, once again, he's kind of like Abdullayev, where I'm not sure how far this guy will go in the UFC, like how long his UFC career will be necessarily. You know, he's still 26, but yeah, you know, Donchenko is not that highly ranked on short notice anyway, and he opened up as a massive underdog, and he still is at the moment. So clearly, odds makers, people that are betting on the fight, don't favor him in a matchup like this. I don't think they're going to favor him in any really other matchups at the 170-pound division either.
Yeah, we're in pretty much complete agreement there. I don't think Berggren's going to find a lot of success in the UFC. And I do think that Donchenko is pretty good. He's still a little bit green, but I think he's only going to improve from the two performances we've seen from him so far.
And then we can move up to Kanoff Lee versus Javier Reyes. Of course, off Lee coming to the UFC off the Ultimate Fighter. And then as for Reyes, he come into the UFC off the Contender Series. And he's 1-0 in the UFC right now as Javier Reyes. But even then in that performance, from what I remembered about the fight, and then when I rewatched the fight, actually were two completely different things, because I just remembered him beating up on Douglas Silva de Andrade and then getting the finish in a dominant position on the ground. But actually, what happened was Silva de Andrade in the first couple minutes, first 90 seconds, actually dropped Reyes badly in that fight. And it sort of showcases the concerns that I've always sort of had about Reyes going into the contender series, even when I did pick Justice Torres to beat him. Um, that I just don't like Reyes striking that much. Now I will admit, it seems like in the UFC it's changed a little bit. He's come out a little bit more aggressive. He's a lot more physically imposing, because although these guys are both listed at 5'7" each, Reyes is going to be the much bigger fighter in the cage between these two guys here. And maybe Reyes is just going to do what he tried to do against Andrade, but with more success. That's closer distance against Offley, pressure Offley on the feet, maybe shoot a takedown or two. But the thing with Offley is, I think you can make a pretty fair argument. I think he might be the more skilled fighter overall, but I worry that Khan Offley has a pretty bad chin. He got dropped by Ija. I think he got knocked out by Myron Santos. I think he got the breaks beaten out of him pretty badly against Naimov as well. Like, just the chin of Offley is concerning. The defense of Offley is concerning. And I would even argue he lost to Ija. Now, I would pick Ija to beat Reyes. So, that is what it is there. But I just think that in this matchup, it's two guys that I don't have super high opinions of fight against each other. So I'm not confident on either side, but I'm going to pick Reyes. And I'm going to pick Reyes to win by knockout over Offley. But if Offley out wrestles Reyes, if Offley submits Reyes, I honestly wouldn't be that surprised. I'm not confident in this one, but I'm going to go with the Reyes knockout in this fight.
Yeah, this is a fight where if either of these guys were fighting really anyone else at featherweight besides a few names, I'd probably pick against them. I think I've picked against Khan Offley every single time he's fought in the UFC, and then I was not impressed with Javier Reyes' debut at all against Douglas Silva de Andrade. That's a bantamweight that moved up to featherweight, and yeah, he kind of had Javier Reyes on Crip Street in that fight. The Contender Series performance was what it was. Like you said, Justice Torres, obviously not a very good fighter, but Javier Reyes does have a lot of experience fighting on the regional scene. He has quite a few submissions of his own, so I don't really see him getting submitted here. I think his jiu-jitsu will be able to hold up. I'm just not really sure how the wrestling holds up. I do think that Javier Reyes being listed at 5'7" is just a flat-out lie. I think he's closer to 5'10" or even 5'11" in this fight, because I think he's just going to be the way bigger fighter when they step into the cage. He's got like a 7-inch reach advantage here on Khan Offley. So I just do not believe at all that they're the same height or even the same frame. Javier Reyes is going to be the much bigger guy in there. But yeah, I thought Khan Offley lost pretty clearly to Yisha, and I also think that the Naimov loss is a pretty bad look considering what we've seen from Naimov lately, or I guess how Naimov looked against Marin Santos, and then Offley got starched by Marin Santos too. That was like a gross knockout. He like face planted on that one. I just I'm in agreement here. I think Reyes is going to be able to get a KO. I'm going to pick him by round 2 KO. Like, there's really not a lot for me to say on this one. I'm just pretty low on both guys. I don't think that Offley's going to be able to do what he did to Ricardo Ramos here against Javier Reyes. I think I even picked Ricardo Ramos to beat Khan Offley, so that just shows you how little I think of Khan Offley. But
Yeah, I did as well, I think, actually. I think I picked against Ovley every time too, so just make it a fifth time, I guess.
yeah, eventually it's gonna pay off. It paid off the first 2 times, and then if Reyes gets a step up in competition, like I said, I'm gonna pick against Reyes pretty quickly here. But in this one, I do think he gets it done, just being the bigger fighter, and I don't think Offley's gonna be able to offer a lot on the feet that really makes Javier Reyes worried here. Our next fight on the card, next prelim, we have Nursultan Ruziboyev versus Andrei Puliev, and This one's up at middleweight. Ruziboyev is a big middleweight, but so is Puliev. Puliev actually has a 2.5 reach advantage here and only a 1-inch height disadvantage. Puliev is the younger fighter. He came in off the Contender Series. Decent performance, but honestly kind of surprised that they signed him off the Contender Series. And since then, he's 1-2 in the UFC with the loss to Christian Leroy Duncan, which isn't terrible considering how Duncan's looked. But even this fight against Nick Klein had him in a lot of trouble early. And then the fight with Gauthier, a lot of people are giving him credit for, but really they're giving him credit because he didn't get finished. He got dropped twice in the first round, lost the second round as well, and then just kind of survived and was able to win the third round against Gauthier. And then Ruziboyev, I believe his only loss in the UFC is to Joaquin Buckley down at 170. I'm honestly kind of amazed that he ever made 170 in the UFC because he's a big middleweight in my opinion. But besides that, he's had some decent performances. He definitely looks a lot better. Well, obviously, like this goes without saying, but he looks a lot better when he's able to implement his game and get it done early. When it goes to decision, I don't think he's looked great, but he was able to knock out Bruno Ferreira, take his O. This fight against Adrikas Dumas, he kind of eye poked him, but that one is what it is. And then the fight with Meconico, he got it done here in round 2. That's actually aging pretty well because Meconico was able to beat Rodolfo Vieira and on paper has a win over Cody Brundage, even though I thought Brundage won that one. This fight with Dustin Stoltzfus was a little bit iffy, but I think Stoltzfus is a lot better than his UFC record shows, at least. And then, yeah, I'm not a big Puliev guy. I think you said this in your prediction video. Puliev does not have a lot on the feet besides his body kick. I don't think he's going to be able to really put Ruziboyev in a lot of trouble here. I think that's a pretty easy thing to game plan for when you've had, 47, 48 professional fights at this point. And I just think that Ruziboyev has the grappling edge here, and I can see this one being a fight where Ruziboyev loses a bit of steam here and loses maybe round 3, but I do think he'll be able to get this one done. I'm leaning towards Ruziboyev by decision because Puliev's tough. He was able to survive against Christian Leroy Duncan and then against Gauthier, but I could see a Ruziboyev round 1 finish here. But if that doesn't happen, I see this one going to decision, and I favor Ruziboyev.
Yeah, I actually think Ruziboyev's going to submit him in this fight here. Now, in the UFC, there's not a lot of evidence to back that up, really, apart from the fact that Nick Klein was able to take the back of Pulaev in less than 90 seconds, which when I saw that, I thought if that's Ruziboyev on your back, it's not going to last that long. But when he made his short notice debut against Bruno Ferreira, I actually picked Ruziboyev to win by submission because everything that I'd seen out of his game, I liked when it came to the grappling quite a lot. And we just haven't really seen it in the UFC. Even I would say the only time we've really seen it was against Buckley, who was taking him down and pressuring him the whole time. And then as for Stoltzfus was knocking him down or taking him down. And then Ruziboyev was reversing him in positions in there. So, it kind of still shows that he's still got a little bit of that grappling. And I think if he uses it on offense rather than defense, it would work out a lot better for him. And I think especially in a matchup like this against Pulaev, who I'm still a little bit surprised that we haven't necessarily seen his wrestling or grappling truly showcased. I mean, I know Nick Klein did it, obviously, but he gassed out trying to do so. And his game plan was to gas out. It was to win in 3 minutes or gas out doing so. And then that's exactly what happened. He gassed out doing so. But I do think that Ruziboyev might be the first person to truly show us what Pulaev's grappling is made of, because I think that on the feet, Pulaev's not aggressive enough on the feet to give Ruziboyev a lot of problems. Yes, he's got the body kick, but nearly every single MMA fighter in the UFC has a body kick, so I think Ruziboyev's probably going to be ready for that. And then aside from that, on the feet, I actually think that Ruziboyev's striking is still pretty good. Knocked out Meconico, knocked out Ferreira. And I actually am going to pick Ruziboyev to go out there and do something he hasn't done in the UFC yet, and that is offensively grapple. When you do watch his wrestling, he's not really like a traditional wrestler. He's not shooting single legs. He's not shooting double legs. He's kind of pulling off the women's MMA trips and head and arm throws and things like that. But I think it's going to work against Fiziev. It's not. I don't think it would work against the higher level wrestler. But I haven't been able to really see a lot of evidence that Pelaev's going to be able to defend the grappling of Fiziev, especially if Fiziev comes out pretty aggressive in a fight like this. And yeah, even then, I think on the feet, I just don't think that Pelaev's aggressive enough to knock down Fiziev like Stoltzfus is. I know people think Stoltzfus sucks. I don't think Stoltzfus is that bad. He had a really bad run in the UFC, but he did knock down Fiziev in that fight, but I don't think Pelaev's aggressive enough with the hands, and I don't think he's going to get dropped by a kick either. So I just like Fiziev quite a lot in this fight, and I actually am going to pick Fiziev to win by submission, very likely in the first round as well.
Yeah, there will probably honestly be some really good odds on Fiziev to win by submission, and I think that would be a smart game plan for him to come out here with. I'm just not going to pick it because we haven't seen it, but yeah, I do think that will be the path of least resistance here, because like you said, if Nick Klein's able to get your back within the first 2 minutes of the fight, I think Fiziev could probably do it if he wants to. But yeah, that just kind of remains to be seen. But yeah, we're both going to be picking Fiziev here. I also agree. I don't think Stoltzfus is that bad at all. People say Stoltzfus is terrible, but I'd probably pick Stoltzfus to beat Puliev, to be honest. And yeah, he's just kind of timid on the feet. I don't like that here against Fiziev because Fiziev is going to go at him.
And then for Abdulrahman Yakyaev versus Julius Walker, I'm picking Yakyaev with a decent amount of confidence. Now, on the regional scene, I actually kind of liked Julius Walker's game a lot, because when he was fighting these guys for these regional shows, but he's still fighting, guys that had made it to the Ultimate Fighter in Niall Bartling, Bavon Lewis, had a stint in the UFC that was pretty short. I think Myron Dennis even fought for Bellator off the top of my head. He did once, but he was fighting guys that were, I guess, regional guys, but guys that had still shown that they were better regional guys than most of them. But in these matchups, he was taking them down, he was controlling them, and every single time he took them down, his opponents were unable to get up, they were unable to deal with the ground and pound, and he had finished them on the ground. Then he makes his debut against Menafield. We don't really see the wrestling. We even don't really see the wrestling that much in the win over Sakira, which is unfortunate because he won it by decision. I think that it's a fight he should have finished if he was to really sort of show us anything. And then the same sort of situation with Jacoby. I just don't know what has changed in Julius Walker's game, to be honest with you, because I actually do think that this is a talented light heavyweight. He just has not shown it in the UFC at all. Whereas you go to the other side, yes, Abdulrahman Yakyaev was hurt a little bit by Brenton Ribeiro in the first round. He's finishing everyone in the first round that he's taken the step up in competition too. He beat Lorenz. I mean, Lorenz, I would argue, was a step down in competition from this regional comp, but then he beat Sakira himself, same opponent, submitted him in the first minute, I believe, off the top of my head, or maybe it was 2 minutes, and then he finished Brenton Ribeiro in a couple of minutes in his own right too, after getting the takedown. So I think Yakyaev, if anything, is just showing that he's a better version of the best version of Julius Walker. So for that reason, I'm going to pick Yakyaev, and I'm going to pick Yakyaev to finish Julius Walker by submission, most likely in the first or the second round. So yeah, I think that Yakyaev makes it look relatively easy, even though I think that Walker's not a bad fighter at all.
Yeah, I'm in agreement here again. We're not going to agree on all the fights, so for everyone watching it, we're not just going to agree on every single fight. But for this one, I definitely agree. Like you said, Alik Lorenz, not a very high level win to get into the UFC, but the UFC, for whatever reason, likes to do that on the Contender Series. They sign guys like Alik Lorenz and Justice Torres just kind of to lose. And then his two fights in the UFC, his debut was impressive against Cerquera. He dropped him bad, and then he submitted him right away. And then, but that's Cerquera. And then this fight with Brenton Ribeiro, it was a little bit sketchy on the feet, but if you're finishing someone in 3 minutes, you can only really can only really say so much about how it looked on the feet. Like, he got it done, he took it where he needed to go, and on the other side, Julius Walker is just someone I think that the UFC brought in a little bit too early. They brought him in on short notice for the Menafield fight when he was 6-0. Um, like you said, he did have a couple good wins on the regional scene, but he really hasn't shown me much in the UFC to make me interested in picking him here. Um, the fight with Menafield hasn't aged too bad because it was a close fight with Menafield, and Menafield since then has beat Umar Sy and Zhang Minyang. But this fight with Cerqueira really was not a good look. Cerqueira had him in some trouble in that fight, and it was more competitive than you would like it to be against Rafael Cerqueira, who's really a very low level UFC fighter. And then most recently, the fight against Dustin Jacoby. Um, that was kind of a head scratching matchup to me. I don't know why you would give a prospect who struggled with Rafael Cerqueira Dustin Jacoby like that. Dustin Jacoby put him away um, pretty easily in that fight, and there isn't a whole lot more to say about it. Um, I think I don't think this fight is like super one-sided on the feet, to be honest. I don't really think Yakyaev's striking is like completely developed yet. He's only 25, but I would give him the edge on the feet, and then I also give him the edge on the ground. The way I see this one going, I kind of think Yakyaev will be able to pressure him and either club and sub him or just get this one down and find a submission eventually. But I am going to be picking Abdul Rahman Yakyaev to win this one by submission, and I think he'll get it done in round 2 in this fight. All right, we move on to our featured prelim on the card of a fight that really has no business being a featured prelim, but it's because Farman Hassanov is a local guy from Azerbaijan. He'll be fighting Eric Nolan here. Eric Nolan making his UFC welterweight debut after debuting on 4 days' notice against Baysengar Susurkayev. And people are giving him quite a bit of credit for the fight against Baysengar Susurkayev. He was able to hurt Susurkayev at the end of round 1. But besides that, I honestly thought he found very limited success. Um, I don't think Eric Nolan's really that bad at all. Some of his regional losses are tough. I don't remember off the top of my head who he lost to on the regional scene, but I know he lost a split decision to Ty Miller early in his career, and then he's putting together some pretty pretty good highlights on the regional scene. Couple flatline KOs here in CFFC. CFFC is a solid regional promotion to me. Um, He's 8-4 here, slightly more experienced. Ages around the same. He'll be like 2 years younger than Farman Hassanov. And Farman Hassanov, this loss was an amateur fight, even though it was after his pro debut. So a little bit weird there. Um, he got put out badly with a head kick in this amateur fight and was just kind of hanging through the ring. Um, but besides that, he's looked pretty good. These last 3 fights have been in LFA, and like CFFC, LFA is a very good regional promotion in my opinion. I think LFA is honestly better. Um, I haven't seen a ton of his fights. I've just basically seen these 3 LFA fights, um, and he's a great wrestler. I think, some sort of wrestling champion. That's his game plan. I think that's going to be his game plan here against Eric Nolan. On the feet, I do think that Eric Nolan's probably a better striker than Farman Hassanov. And for as long as this one's going to be on the feet, I'll be a little bit worried as someone who is going to pick Farman Hassanov. But as soon as Farman Hassanov decides to get a takedown here, I don't think Eric Nolan's going to be able to get up. And I just kind of think that Hassanov is going to be able to put him away with the ground and pound. Hassanov has very good ground and pound and very good wrestling, like I said. And I think that's pretty much going to be all that he needs to be Eric Nolan. Um, I think this is just a pretty bad matchup for Eric Nolan, and I could be completely wrong here, but I see Hassanov being able to take him down. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that honestly, Eric Nolan's good. I think he's fun. I think if he was given better matchups in the UFC in general. I mean, the 3 days, 2 days notice against Bisengo Sakai at 185 pounds, it is what it is. And then, I kind of thought that the UFC would reward him with a much more simple matchup, and I don't think that they have. I don't know if the UFC thinks that they're doing Nolan a favor here. Technically giving him I guess a working holiday in Azerbaijan, but they haven't given him a working holiday in Azerbaijan against someone that's gonna sort of let Nolan do what I think Nolan is best at. I know Nolan is a good grappler, but I would consider his boxing ability to be the best part of his game. And yeah, as you said, when he knocks people out and when he has knocked people out in Cage Fury UFC, as Jeremy Stevens has said, they are not getting back up. He's one punch knocking these guys out. He's face planting them. The knockout over Trevor Good was insane. Like Good was laying on his back, like out cold for a pretty long period of time. That was bad, man. And then the thing is, though, I just am not convinced that he's going to be able to defend the takedowns of Farman Hasanov. As you alluded to, Farman Hasanov is a national wrestling champion in Azerbaijan in 2022. He's a silver medalist in freestyle wrestling in the European Championships as well. So, when it comes to being a wrestler, he's an international level wrestler. So he's good. He's very good at wrestling. Now, in LFA, he's not been aggressive with the takedown attempts, which is something that I would have liked to see, just given the fact that when he's been able to take his opponents down, the fight just is over because his ground and pound is that good. And in a way, he reminds me of a early Mansour Abdul Malik in that sort of aspect, because that's how Mansour Abdul Malik was being able to deal with his regional opponents before the Contender Series in the UFC. But I think against Nolan here, Hasanov's a bit shorter, but he's a big guy for the weight class. He's very well built. I think he should be able to take down Nolan if he can avoid the striking and Nolan can't defend the takedowns, which is what I think is going to happen. I think Hasanov, I think once he gets it down to the ground, so far, every time he's finished the fight, and I think he's going to finish the fight here against Eric Nolan with ground and pounds, which isn't necessarily a super common way you see fights finish, but I do just trust in Hasanov's wrestling ability, his top control, the power he's able to generate from such a short space, especially his most recent fight. He never even found Mount in that fight. He was just ground and pounding him from the guard, and they stopped the fight due to a cut. Like, it was insane. So yeah, I just don't know if Nolan's going to get to last 3 rounds in there with Hasanov. I'm going to go with Hasanov to win by knockout as well, by ground and pound, TKO by ground and pound in this matchup.
Yeah, we're on the same page there. I'm just gonna be scared for as long as this one's on the feet, because I do think that Eric Nolan's significantly better on the feet. But I hope that Hasanov is able to get this one down. I think he'll get it done in round 1 or 2, depending on if he's able to deal damaging shots on the ground, which he's shown to be able to do. I just hope he shoots basically right away in this one, as someone who's going to be picking Hasanov.
Yeah, it depends on the game plan. Like, as I said, in the LFA, he's not been super aggressive in the wrestling, but if he is aggressive in the wrestling against a better opponent in the UFC, I think that I think he should be able to get it done. But as we move on to middleweight, Abus Magomedov versus Mikhail Olachechik, I am siding with the underdog in this fight here, Mikhail Olachechik. I have liked what I've seen out of him since he did move over to the Fighting Nerds. I think that maybe I am overrating a lot of these performances, but I do think that he really did manage to turn his career around, because this is someone that used to fight at 205 pounds and was kind of just jobbing it out at 205 pounds. If he didn't get a knockout in the first round, he would lose, sort of situation. Now at 185 pounds, and with the gym change as well, I think he's looked a lot better. I like a lot of what I've been able to see so far. I know that GM3 knockout and Cedricus Dumas knockout doesn't really move the needle for many, but it's a lot more considering the performances he was coming off in the past, I thought, and even against Marc-Andre Barriault, even though it was a bit of a not great performance necessarily out of Olachechik, it still win fight of the night. And I think that Marc-Andre Barriault, once again, probably is a fighter that I overrate too, because I do just respect Barriault's pressure, his power he's able to generate himself. So what Olachechik is going to bring to this game is boxing and not really anything else. I don't think Olachechik has thrown a kick above the leg maybe in his career. Honestly, he definitely hasn't kicked anyone in the head. I can tell you that much. But yeah, I think that Olachechik's going to be going forward. He's going to be boxing. He's going to be pressuring Abus Magomedov. Abus Magomedov is going to have a bit of a range advantage. Abus Magomedov is a much better kicker out of the two, but I think if Mikhail just maintains pressure, he should be able to shut off that space. And I am trusting in Mikhail Olachechik's ability to keep the fight on the feet for as long as it lasts either way. So I'm going to be picking Mikhail by knockout. And yeah, he's going to have to get it done early, I think, in this fight. So first and second rounds, a knockout for Mikhail is my take in this one.
Okay, so this is the first spot where me and Artem are actually going to disagree. This is a very low confident pick for me, but I'm slightly leaning on the Abus Magomedov side. Um, Abus Magomedov also is very, in my opinion, he's good on the feet in round one. He took round one off Sean Strickland. He dominated Bruno Ferreira in round one. He found that 19-second knockout against Dustin Stoltzfus in his debut, and then this fight against Michel Pereira, kind of a bad performance. Both guys gassed, but I think both guys are going to gas in this one as well. So I will be afraid that Mikhail Alexeychik finds a shot that puts him away. Mikhail able to drop Kevin Holland, who has a historically good chin. Um, and yeah, Mikhail's on a decent win streak. I don't really rate the level of opposition that he's been beating. Um, but he did what he was supposed to do against Dumas, and he did what he was supposed to do against GM3. So you can't really discredit him for that too much. The Marc-Andre Barriou fight does um, give me some red flags because he looked really good against Marc-Andre Barriou in round one, and then as it went on, he just got worse and worse. But I think the same thing's going to happen for Abus Magomedov. I do like the grappling upside of Abus Magomedov here. He was able to, despite being really, really tired, he was able to take down Bruno Ferreira pretty much at will in that fight. And his three losses in the UFC are to Sean Strickland, Kyle Borralho, and Joe Pyfer. And I don't think Joe Pyfer is the best fighter in the world by any means, but I think he would beat Oleksiejczuk pretty handily. So I'm not really gonna um, give Magomedov too much flack for that one. And yeah, if Magomedov is smart in this one, he's gonna be shooting early and often. Um, I just I don't know. I really don't know how the cardio is gonna hold up for either guy. I don't think it's gonna be good though. I'm leaning towards Abus Magomedov, and I think he'll be able to find a sub because Mikhail Zajac is honestly kind of defenseless on the ground, but I will be a little bit worried for Abus in round one and round two, and then from then on, it's pretty much a free for all. If it goes past halfway through round two, it's really anybody's game. I'm just leaning towards Magomedov because of the wrestling and the grappling here, but I'm favoring Magomedov by sub. This is a very low confidence pick for me though. All right, our next one, we're staying at middleweight, and this is Bruno Ferreira versus Ikram Aliskerov, and this fight was actually booked for UFC 318, and then Aliskerov had to pull out, and Bruno Ferreira ended up fighting Jackson McVeigh and finding a first round armbar in that one. Ikram Aliskerov, two losses in his career are to Hamzat Chimaev and Robert Whitaker. Both of those fights, he got knocked out badly in round one, I believe. So the chin is a bit of a concern with Aliskerov here. Ferreira does have a lot of power at middleweight, despite being only 5'10 for the weight class, only having a 72-inch reach. He carries a ton of power in the compact frame that he has. Um, but Aliskerov, I thought the performance against Jung Young Park was pretty good, and the performance against Muniz, he did what he was supposed to do. And yeah, he's finding a lot of KOs in here. The Iron Turtle is very tough, so he wasn't able to put him away. But that's a good win in my opinion. I think Jung Young Park is pretty similar level of fighter that Bruno Ferreira is. Um, that might be a hot take, But Bruno Ferreira, on the other hand, made his debut against Gregory Rodriguez and was able to put him away in a fight where I don't think a lot of people saw that coming. He only has 3 losses in his career, all of them coming in the UFC. Lost to Abus Magomedov by arm triangle in round 3, and that's just not a good look to me. Losing in round 3 by finish to Abus Magomedov, not a very good look because, like I said, Magomedov gasses badly, and then he was able to find a sub here against Armen Petrosian. Petrosian never had a lot of grappling. He was pretty much a pure kickboxer. Able to find the sub against Jackson McVeigh. That was just kind of a nightmare debut for Jackson McVeigh, and I don't really rate Jackson McVeigh either. And then this decision against Marvin Vettori, he missed weight by like 3 pounds despite being 5'10" at middleweight. And then close fight with Marvin Vettori, and this is a decent win against Vettori, but I would also pick Alaskarov to beat Vettori. I think Vittori's just pretty much fully washed. And then most recently, only 3 months ago, he got knocked out by the first punch, basically that landed from Gregory Rodriguez in their rematch, and got put out really badly. Um, I don't really like the short turnaround here for Bruno Ferreira. After getting put out that bad, I would like him to take probably 6 months off instead of 3 months off. And in a fight that I think would be close with both of these guys at full health, I'm just leaning towards Alaskarov for that reason. Really, I don't like the short turnaround for Bruno Ferreira, and also he showed really bad wrestling defense against Abus Magomedov, and I think Alaskarov is a similar level of wrestler, if not better, like probably even a little bit better at wrestling than Abus Magomedov. So again, I'm on the Alaskarov side here. I'm not really confident in a method of victory for him, but I would not be surprised if he was able to put out Bruno Ferreira after Bruno Ferreira just got put out.
Yeah, I also am going to pick Ikram Alaskarov in this matchup as well. Bruno Ferreira is an interesting fighter to me because I actually did pick him to win against Gregory Rodriguez the first time on short notice in that matchup. But that was when Rodriguez was coming off that win over Chidi and Jaquani, which he took a lot of damage in. So I guess you could even just apply the same logic here, except on the other side, because yeah, Bruno Ferreira, it was only 3 months ago, he just got knocked out relatively badly by Rodriguez himself in that rematch, and now he's going to be fighting Ikram Alaskarov. So it's just another one of those cases where I am relatively surprised he's medically cleared to come back against what some people would say is a step up, maybe even in the rankings. I know Rodriguez is on a great run himself, but Alaskarov himself has been sort of dabbling in that top 15 area in his own career, especially recently when he stepped up on short notice against Whitaker. Did lose badly, admittedly, but still was there. And then after that, he's won a couple. I think the win over Junior Park is good, given the fact that we were able to see everything out of him in that matchup. He didn't just knock out someone that doesn't really have a great chin like Phil Hawes or even Wally Alves on that matter. We saw him go 3 rounds against Park, and he really tested Park in the wrestling and the striking in that matchup. So I just kind of liked that all-around sort of skill set that he showcased. Bruno Ferreira is decent on the ground, as you mentioned, a couple of submissions he's got, but he does have a judo base and just sort of found the power, I guess, in the Contender Series and just carried it all over through to the UFC. But I think in this matchup, I think Alaskarov is the more skilled fighter. I think he's the more well-rounded fighter. I don't like Ferreira's 3 months off after losing by knockout at all. So I actually am going to go and I'm going to pick Ikram Alaskarov to win this matchup. And I'm going to actually pick him to win this fight by finish. I think he's going to knock out Bruno Ferreira probably a little bit later. I want to say maybe second round, maybe even third round. But I think he's going to find the finish at some point.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Alaskarov's going to be able to find a finish here. I'm just not sure if it'll be a submission or a TKO, but I think I'm also more on the TKO side. But like you said, not really sure how Ferreira is medically cleared to fight after getting put out cold. It wasn't like it was just unanswered follow-up shots. He got put out cold and put out bad by Gregory Rodriguez. And then going back to the first fight of the night, like kind of unrelated, but I'm not sure how Nascimento was medically cleared to fight either after getting dropped really badly and that cut right above his eye. So when someone's making a quick turnaround like this, I'm automatically going to favor the other guy. So yeah, I'm also on the Aliskerov side, and I think he'll find a KO. Um, yeah, probably mid to late rounds, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he just kind of starts Bruno in round one.
And then we can move on to Asu Almabayev versus Charles Johnson, and I'm not confident in this fight at all. Because going into it, I was going to pick Almabayev. That was sort of like my early lean, and then after looking into it, I've definitely lost confidence in that thought process because Johnson's good. You know, this is actually the kind of fight that Johnson wins. He's shown historically good takedown defense throughout his entire career. I would even include the Mikhaev fight in that matchup because although he got taken down many times, he was getting up all the time. And just in general, when he does take on a wrestler that he's the better striker, then he can find a lot of success. And he's even beaten, obviously, a lot of very good fighters in the promotion. He's beaten Azat Maksum, who was 15-0 at the time. He beat Joshua Van, who's the champion. He knocked out Lana Kavanagh, who might even get the next title shot with a knockout over Brandon Moreno. Sorry, not a Brandon Moreno, over Brandon Royval. So yeah, Johnson's been there. He's done that. He's beaten some of the best guys in the world. And now he's fighting Almabayev, who, when he took his big step up in competition, it was one of those performances that we saw at a Manal Cup where we sort of realized that Manal Cup is starting to really turn a new leaf in his career and is big time stepping up. But yeah, since then, we have seen Almabayev go back to his winning ways, even if it did come in a really odd sort of quick guillotine submission after losing to Perez for a couple of rounds. The striking didn't look that good against Perez. The wrestling and striking looked decent against Ochoa, though. So it's just one of those ones which everything I just said does lean you in the Charles Johnson direction. But the problem with Johnson is that I don't like that he just got knocked out by Alex Perez. I did not like that he came back quickly against Bruno Silva after that, and he was coming back quickly again. So once again, it's a case of someone that's taken a lot of damage in the last 4 months at flyweight, as someone that's nearly 36 years old now at flyweight. And I know Almabayev's not that dangerous on the feet, but I do think what Almabayev is going to bring in this fight is still a lot of pressure, a lot of offensive boxing into takedown attempts, into clinch control up against the cage. And although, yeah, Charles Johnson has all the tools to win the fight, it is starting to get to the point now, which I just don't know if I can pick a 35-year-old flyweight. I know I picked Horiguchi last weekend, but I think Horiguchi was sort of showing a lot more than Johnson is right now. So for that reason, and just very much recency bias, I am going to go with Asu Almabayev, but I don't feel good about the fight really at all, to be honest.
Yeah, I would say this is probably my lowest confidence pick on the entire card. And I'm on the same page with you. Like when I first saw this fight, I was like, there should be an Almabayev win because I was remembering the times where Charles Johnson has lost to Cody Durden and Rafael Estevam and guys like that at flyweight. But I don't really see Almabayev being able to control him like that dominantly. Um, for Asu Almabayev, he was getting out wrestled in the first 2 rounds by Alex Perez in that fight. Like he didn't have really any grappling success of his own, save for maybe one takedown in the second round. But yeah, besides that, Alex Perez kind of got a little bit overwhelmed at the start of the third round and then just shot straight into a guillotine and ended up um, selling his lead in that one. But I think this fight is a similar matchup to the Jose Ochoa matchup for Almabayev, but Ochoa goes forward more than Charles Johnson does. Charles Johnson kind of stays on the outside. He doesn't press forward a lot in his fights, um, save for the times where he's finding his knockouts. I did not really like the performance against Bruno Silva at all, especially after rewatching it. I think every single round of that fight was close. He didn't really create much separation from Bruno Silva at all. And the Alex Perez fight, also not a good look for him. But like you said, Charles Johnson's a really weird one because he'll go out there and he'll knock out Loner Kavanagh and he'll knock out Joshua Van, but then he'll lose to Ramazan Temirov. and Alex Perez, but he also has a win over Sumaderji. Um, I don't know. I'm starting to lean towards Charles Johnson in this one because he's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage, 5-inch height advantage. Um, but I really am unsure of this fight. This is one that I'm going to fence sit, and I I don't really know. I think Charles Johnson's activity, like you said, I don't think it's necessarily a good thing with some of the damage that he's taken recently. And this is a guy that says he wants to fight like 3 or 4 times this year, and we're already halfway through the year. So if he loses this one, I think he needs to take some time off for sure. Um, but Almabayev has looked pretty good besides the Manel Cap performance and the first 2 rounds of that Alex Perez fight. Um, I just I don't like I don't like how small of a flyweight Almabayev is. Um, I just don't know. I'm not sure if Charles Johnson's wrestling defense is really going to be able to hold up here. I think it very well could, but I really, really do not know. I think I'm tentatively going to lean on the Charles Johnson side, actually, by a close decision, because I don't think Almabayev's going to be able to control Johnson for as long as he did Ochoa. And with damage-based scoring, I think Charles Johnson might be able to squeak this one out. But I also wouldn't be surprised if a close decision was given to Almabayev here, seeing as he's the more local fighter. Um, I just really do not know in this fight. Um, yeah, this is a really tough one to break down, in my opinion. There's not a lot on either side that's telling me to go with one guy or the other. All right, our featured fight on the card for some reason is not Almabayev versus Charles Johnson, but it's Nazim Sadikov versus Mateus Camilo. And I'm not very high on either guy in this matchup. Sadikov's first loss at lightweight was to Fiziev in his most recent fight, but since that one hasn't really aged too well, seeing as Tom Nolan was able to beat Fiziev didn't show very good fight IQ in that fight, but he looked really, really good against Nazim Sadikov. Um, the draw with Borshev, not a good look in terms of Sadikov's fight IQ. The fight with Mata, he got hurt really, really badly by Mata early in this one and was able to survive somehow. If it was a different ref, I think they would have stopped the fight. It would have been a standing TKO for Mata, but Sadikov was able to stay in it and find his own KO late in round one. This fight against Bonfim, he was able to land a question mark kick that cut open Bonfim under the eye. Um, so that was a very solid win from him. But then um, also the win over Terrence McKinney, able to survive McKinney's early onslaught and sub him in round two with a trapped arm rear naked choke. But before that, it was the fight against Evan Elder, where he was down 2 rounds to 0, and then they stopped it because of the cut. But I said, I don't think that fight was really should have been stopped. I don't think the cut was bad enough to be stopped, and I don't like when fights like a 3-round fight gets stopped in round three. So I'm a little bit lower on Sadikov than the majority of the fan base. 94% of people are picking the Zim Sadikov here, but I'm also quite low on Mateus Camilo. I actually picked Gabe Green to beat Mateus Camilo in his debut, and that was a pretty good snipe from me. I actually picked Gabe Green by sub in that fight, and that's what happened because Camilo gassed and kind of just quit in round two of that fight after after a good first round. He tried to pull a triangle on Gabe Green in round two, and then Gabe Green able to find a rear naked choke there. And then this fight against Vyacheslav Borshev, um, also not a great performance from Camilo, but we've seen Borshev give some higher level opponents a tough time. Like he gave, it was the same thing with Sadikov. Sadikov went to a draw with Borshev. Mateus Camilo went to a close decision with Borshev, where he was able to slightly pull ahead. I think Camilo was the rightful winner, but that fight closer than you would like it to be against Borshev. I'm very low on Mateus Camilo, like I said. Um, if I'm picking Gabe Green to beat you, that probably shows that I don't think you're very good. And Nazim Sadikov, besides his fight against Fiziev, he's been able to find wins in the UFC. Um, he's just a little bit reckless. I don't like the defense of Nazim Sadikov, so I think Camilo's best path to victory here would be if he was able to catch Nazim Sadikov early. I just don't think that's going to be able to happen, and I think the tides will turn at some point in this fight, and Nazim Sadikov will be able to find his own TKO with an accumulation of damage. But these are two lightweights that I'm not very high on at all, like I said.
Yeah, I'm picking Nazim Sadikov to win as well over Mateus Camilo. Also, kind of a case of which I just think that Camilo is just not going to be dangerous enough to give Sadikov problems. Even though I do think that Sadikov is still pretty good, and I probably am a little bit higher on Sadikov than what most people are. But yeah, Mateus Camilo, to me, I just haven't really been impressed by anything he's brought to the table. You know, whatever Vyacheslav Borchev is pretty good, but he's a grappler. Camilo is a grappler, and Borchev has historically struggled with anybody that's tried to take him down, really. And Sadikov's pretty well rounded. I think he's a better striker than Camilo. I think he's got better cardio than Camilo. The loss to Ziam is concerning because, yeah, Ziam found success kind of everywhere in that matchup. You know, he had control, whether that was cage control, top control, 60% of the time in that matchup that it lasted, and then he finished Sadikov, and then yeah, Ziam just looked. He just looked so bad against Tom Nolan. So the fact that we just saw Siam really have a bad performance, and then Sadikov had a bad performance against Siam, like either may math that out, it doesn't really work out too well. But I do think that Sadikov's going to beat Camillo in this matchup. I think he's also going to finish Camillo by finish in the second or the third round as well, as you have picked there. And then if we can move on to the co-main, which is going to be fun. If anything, it's just going to be fun because it is Mikhail Pereira versus Shadaputdin Magomedov. I think that Shadar Magomedov's fun in the promotion. You know, he's always had win or lose pretty fun performances, whether it be a performance the night performance, a fight of the night performance. Just because he's a good striker, you know, he's not necessarily a dangerous striker. We even saw that in his debut. I want to say, well, no, sorry, not his debut, a second fight in the promotion against Antonio Tricoli, which it took him 3 rounds to finish Tricoli. That was very obviously the UFC trying to hand him a highlight, and he took his time doing so, but that is just how Shara fights. He pressures, he throws a decent amount of volume out there with the hands, with the kicks, but he just doesn't necessarily have a great deal of power to finish a fight. And we've seen that throughout really his whole UFC career. Now, in the regional scene, of course, he did at one point have a 16-0 record. A bunch of them got overturned because they weren't like MMA fights. They were a different rule set and things like that. But yeah, the guys that he was fighting and finishing on the regional scene were just really bad. So it doesn't necessarily surprise me that now he's come up to the UFC, hasn't been able to find the finishes. But I think this is a fight he's going to finish because I think that Mikhail Pereira is so intriguing to me. He fought at 170 pounds. He was massive at 170 pounds. And then he moved up to 185 after struggling to make the weight too many times. And then he just started absolutely destroying the lower ranks of 185. And that includes Mikhail Lolachechek with a first, 1 minute and 1 second choke in that fight. And then after that, he got the main event spot. And ever since then, he's just looked terrible. He's been gassing out in the first rounds. We learned at 185, he's got 1 round of cardio, got knocked out by Dalkas. 1 round of cardio against Magomedov, 1 round of cardio against Hernandez, 1 round of cardio against Zach Reese even. And now I think if you have 1 round of cardio against Shadaputdin Magomedov, maybe you're going to be able to finish him in the first round. Because Shara, as I said, he is a striker. He's going to want to stand with Mikhail. But at the same time, if he survives the first, which I'm going to pick him to do so, because he is defensively sound enough to do it, I think in the second, the third round, Mikhail Pereira is going to be gassed. And we've seen Shara go 3 rounds so much now at a high volume that the volume's going to add up. I think that the body work from Shara will add up. And I think that Shara is going to finish Mikhail Pereira by TKO. If anything, just due to pure exhaustion from the Pereira side, I think it will be like a stand-in, sort of awkward, not highlight reel TKO in the second or the third rounds for Shara Magomedov in this fight.
Yeah, we're on the same page here. I don't know how you can really move up a weight class and your cardio doesn't get any better. Honestly, it's you can make an argument that it's been worse. Michelle Pereira at one point, I believe, was on an 8-fight win streak or a 7-fight win streak between welterweight and middleweight, which is kind of crazy in hindsight considering how bad he's looked lately. Um, that fight with Hernandez, he had very limited success, but he had a little bit of success early against Hernandez. But after that, um, Hernandez just kind of walked him. I was surprised that that fight went as long as it did with how badly Hernandez was beating him and how much of an advantage that Hernandez had in that fight. Um, and then since then, Abus Magomedov, I picked to beat him. Abus Magomedov got that one done. It was a battle of the poor cardio. And then I picked Kyle Dawkins to beat him, but was shocked when Kyle Dawkins finished him as quickly as he did and with a punch nonetheless, because Kyle Dawkins really hasn't shown to be able to do that at the UFC level very much. And then yet again, I picked against him in the Zach Reese fight. I picked Zach Reese to beat him. And honestly, this was a terrible fight, but I did slightly favor Zach Reese after watching it. Might have been biased though because I picked him. This was just a really bad fight, and I think part of it was because him and Zach Reese have trained together in the past, and those fights always look a little bit weird when the guys have been sparring partners. But just another bad performance from Michel Pereira, and another fight where he gassed. The reason that he was able to make it 3 rounds, he was he got a lot of time between nut shots and things like that where he was able to sort of catch his breath, and even that didn't really help him. Shara Magomedov, the one loss in his career is to Michael Venom Page. Um, I don't like MVP, but in a pure point fighting fight, that's a pretty tough matchup for him. It was a pretty even matchup, and we really haven't seen Shara get hurt besides against Marc-Andre Barriou when Marc-Andre Barriou broke his nose. Um, So yeah, I would be shocked honestly if Michelle Pereira was able to get the first round finish here. Um, Shara, like you said, point fighter, doesn't really have any quick KOs at the UFC level, especially. So I don't think this is going to be a round one KO. This might not even be a round two KO. But I think Pereira's cardio is so bad and so much worse than Shara's. Um, I really don't see any path to victory for Michelle Pereira besides round one TKO slash submission. But I don't think that's going to happen with what we've seen recently out of Michelle Pereira. Um, yeah, really ever since that Anthony Hernandez fight, he's looked really bad in my opinion, and is sort of on his way out of the UFC to me. Um, but yeah, I'm also favoring Shara Magomedov by late TKO here because I just think Pereira is gonna death gas and really just kind of quit at some point in this fight. I'm picking Shara by round three TKO. I could see it a little bit earlier than that, but he's really just more of a point fighter than anything, and he really doesn't have a ton of power that he generates on the feet. Especially with his hands, there's not a lot of power there unless it's the spinning back fist against Armin Petrosian, but I think his kicks are his best weapon, and eventually he's gonna break down Michel Pereira to all three levels, and I think he's gonna find a late finish here, if not a pretty dominant and clear decision for Shara Magomedov. And then we've made it to the main event. Um, we have Rafael Fiziev fighting at home against Manuel Torres, and this is a tough main event. Like we said at the beginning of the video, me and Artem are both on 3-fight main event losing streaks, which is tough luck. We both picked Muhammad, we both picked Taporia, and we both picked Horiguchi. The Horiguchi one hurt especially because Horiguchi looked so good up until he didn't. Um, and I just think this is a really another tough one to predict, honestly. This is kind of like I don't really have a good comparison for what this fight is, but Manuel Torres, 17-3 in his pro career. All three of his losses have come in the first round, two of them by sub, one of them by TKO against Ignacio Bahamondes at the Sphere. But besides that, he has some decent wins in the UFC, not the highest level competition, but Also not the lowest level competition, kind of middle of the pack for Manuel Torres. Wins over Nicholas Mata. This was a nasty elbow in round one that he landed on Nicholas Mata. Round one sub over Chris Duncan. But Chris Duncan hurt him within the first 10 seconds of this fight and sort of had him backing up. Like we said, Ignacio Bahamondes dropped him at least twice before the finishing sequence. He dropped him for sure once, and then I also thought he kind of got dropped with the head kick that Bahamondes threw. Bahamondes just kind of picked him apart and dissected him in this fight. Um, Torres just kept going forward, diving into range, and yeah, just kind of got dismantled, like I said, by Ignacio Bahamondes. But since then, um, devastating loss here. He beat my favorite fighter in the world, Drew Dober. Um, but I picked him to beat Drew Dober. I kind of knew it was going to happen. It was a nasty 1-2 combo, and then a ton of unanswered shots as Drew Dober was in on his leg. And then most recently, Grant Dawson. Grant Dawson went into this one with a terrible game plan. He didn't really commit to any takedowns against Manuel Torres, and he was throwing out of his shoes on the feet. He was winging overhands, and that's how he ends up getting caught. And Manuel Torres put him away in half of a round. That's the best win of Manuel Torres' career, but we've seen from Grant Dawson that on the feet he's kind of a victim sometimes. Um, Grant Dawson gets hurt, Grant Dawson gets dropped a lot, and Torres was able to um, do his thing against him, put him away in round one. And then Fiziev, record's looking pretty ugly lately, but the level of competition's been much higher than Manuel Torres. Um, Two losses to Gaethje, both competitive. He looked really good in the most recent Gaethje fight in round one, and then just kind of faded after that. But that one becomes a little bit more excusable when we've seen what Gaethje was able to do against Pimblett and what he was able to do against Taporia. So that one doesn't look as bad in hindsight. Either of the Gaethje losses, the Gamrot loss, kind of a fluke leg injury, and good win over Ignacio Bahamondes the last time they were in Baku. I actually picked Bahamondes to beat him because I didn't really like the career trajectory of Rafael Fiziev, and he had talked about moving down to featherweight after the second Gaethje fight, and I'm not really sure why he didn't. He's never been a big lightweight, but he was able to get the win over Bahamondes. So that's probably what kept him up there. And then most recently against Rufi, he had a pretty good round one against Rufi. But the thing that worries me here a lot against Manuel Torres is the fact that Rufi was stinging him with the jab really badly and landing pretty much every straight shot that he threw against Rafael Fiziev. And Manuel Torres does throw a lot of straight shots in this fight. He doesn't really loop. He doesn't really throw a lot of hooks or overhands. Manuel Torres kind of a 1-2 guy, and he also has the knees. He also has the elbows. Um, I am just worried for the chin of Rafael Fiziev here. I think if you are going to pick Manuel Torres, you kind of have to pick him by round one or round two KO, but mainly round one because Manuel Torres is a guy that hasn't left round one since I believe 2018 or 2019, which is kind of insane because that's almost 8 years ago at this point. Or 8 years ago at this point. He hasn't seen a round two, and I'm not sure in this one. Nobody's really put away Rafael Fiziev super quickly, but coming off of a KO loss, I'll just say I'll be really scared if I do end up picking Rafael Fiziev. This is one where I really haven't made a confident final decision for, and I could see myself changing it later in the week. Even though I don't like to do so, this is just one I haven't really been able to get a confident read or seen anything that makes me super confident in either side. I just think um, if Manuel Torres doesn't get it done early, it's going to start looking worse and worse for him. But we really don't know. The cardio's a big question mark for Manuel Torres. Um, he's not a very clean striker, but he's an extremely, extremely powerful striker. And I'm just not sure if Fiziev's chin is going to be able to hold up here. Um, I think the later this one goes, obviously, the more it starts to favor Fiziev. I think Fiziev's defense is pretty good, but that's his defense against kicks is what's really good. Manuel Torres doesn't even throw a lot of kicks. It's mainly boxing for Manuel Torres, and my initial lean was Manuel Torres, by early TKO, and I don't know. I might just stay on that side, but I've seen a lot of people that are picking Rafael Fiziev, and I'm starting to get more convinced of that to be able to happen. But this is just low confidence either way that I end up picking it because I can see Manuel Torres sparking him out early, like within the first 2 minutes of this fight. Or the other side is I think Fiziev will be able to, well, his defense may be able to hold up, and then I think he'll be able to find his own TKO in like the round 3, round 4 time frame. Um, I don't know. I really don't know. I thought Manuel Torres was younger than he is. He's 31. Rafael Fiziev's 33. So not a huge difference there. But the career trajectory of Manuel Torres and Rafael Fiziev is very different. And I don't know. I think I'm gonna fence sit the Manuel Torres side. I'm gonna pick Manuel Torres by round 1 KO TKO here.
Yeah, I think if he's gonna win the fight, it's gonna be by round one knockout, for sure. But I am picking Fiziev, to be honest with you. Now, I do think that he should be able to avoid the big shots from Torres early. I think he is the more technical striker. I think he's got better footwork. I like the fact that he's been implementing a lot more wrestling in his game, especially in the Bahamondes fight. He did that. He did it in the second Gaethje fight. Didn't see it that much against Rufi, and eventually he did get caught against Rufi, obviously, which is a little bit concerning because Rufi and Torres, now they don't fight the same by any means, but in terms of sort of size, they both have a pretty long reach for the weight class. They both throw straight punches. They both, I believe Rufi's around 5'10", 5'11" himself. So he is going to be taking on another guy that is taller than him, that has a longer reach than him. So he's not going to be able to do the Bahamondes sort of game plan, which is stay safe from range and then be able to sort of work the pocket when Torres comes in. He's kind of gonna always be he's gonna be in the pocket a lot more, sorry, than Bahamondes was in. So that's definitely a concern here. But I do think that against Torres, as long as Fiziev doesn't really do anything too dumb, and if Fiziev goes out there and goes wrestles, I think that he should be able to find the success. Now the thing about Torres is that he does have sneaky grappling, so maybe even if Fiziev does grapple offensively, he's so strong, he's so powerful, we might just see like a meme guillotine or something out of him. I don't know. But I do think that I'm picking Fiziev because when I was watching the fights, I like Torres. The UFC's trying to set up Torres, I do believe, because they've been doing this with the lightweight division recently. The younger up and coming guys are trying to get sort of sorted out by the older guard or the other way around, really. They're trying to get new guys in the rankings instead of other guys that have just been there for years and years and years now. But so far, the old guard has held off pretty strong, except for Beneil Dariush. That, yeah, he's unfortunately the exception out of the rest of them. And I think that Fiziev honestly should be able to hold off another surging contender. Is able to hold off Bahamondes. I think he should be able to hold off Torres here. But yeah, it definitely is one of those fights, which I do believe if Torres wins the fight, it's going to be by knockout in round one. A sneaky submission would surprise me. I think that would be a very fun result, but I am going to go against that pick. I am going to pick Fiziev to finish Torres and do it in maybe round 2, round 3 sort of thing. I think there's no chance this fight goes the distance. I don't think really anyone's expecting it to go the distance unless you are picking Fiziev, but yeah, I think it's a Torres round 1 knockout, or it's okay, 50%. I think they'll want a Fiziev decision. I just don't
That's
believe
wild.
that. Yeah, I just don't believe that. I really don't believe that Torres. I know there's no evidence to say yes or no to this. I just don't believe that Torres is going to have the cardio, given how much energy he expends in the first round, to last 5 rounds. 5 rounds is a long time, and Torres has never even been 3 in the UFC at the UFC level. So yeah, that is crazy that people aren't favoring the Fiziev finish. Yeah, I'm thinking the Fiziev to finish him in the second or the third round. But yeah, I think it's fun. I think I love this fight a lot, actually. Definitely, it makes sense to pick Torres, I think, because Fiziev is smaller than Torres. But I do just still believe, despite the losses, despite the form, that Fiziev is the more skilled fighter out of the two, and that's what I'm going to side with. And hopefully it doesn't turn into a 4-week main event skid. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I might end up switching to Fiziev because then in that case, if if I get it wrong, then we're both getting it wrong.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't
Someone's
know. I
always got to
really don't
go.
know. I'm gonna need to think on it for a few more days. But I completely
Yeah.
agree with everything that you've said. I think Fiziev is definitely the more talented fighter, like the more skilled fighter. I just think Torres has obviously way more power. I think that kind of goes without saying. And I think Torres is a lot more dangerous early. But even Fiziev against Gaethje won the first round. Even Fiziev against Rufi arguably won the first round. So I could definitely be swayed to picking Fiziev. This is like a 51% confidence pick for me on Manuel Torres. It was just my initial lean, and I don't really like to switch my initial lean all that much. Um, but yeah, I do think it's crazy that 50% of people that are picking Fiziev see this going the distance. I just really don't see that happening. Um, Manuel Torres, like it's one thing to train for 5 rounds, it's another thing to actually be in the cage for 5 rounds. And Manuel Torres hasn't even been into a second round in the UFC or even on the regional scene, like we said, since 2018, which is just kind of insane. So I don't think Fiziev by decision is a good pick. Um, but yeah, I think a round 2 or 3 TKO for Fiziev is probably the second most likely outcome in my opinion. I don't know. I really don't know on that one. We're split, but I might end up just switching to Fiziev and hedging my bet. Um, Yeah, that's pretty much gonna do it for UFC Fight Night Baku. We can just run through the quick picks really quick. We're both gonna be picking pretty much the same for all of the prelims. We have Abdulayev, we have Matsumoto, Donchenko, Reyes, Ruziboyev, Yakyayev, and Hasanov. I'm gonna be picking Magomedov. Artem's picking Mikhail Zajic. We're both picking Alaskarov. I'm slightly on the Charles Johnson side, but this is another one that I can switch. Really, this one in the main event are my two least confident picks on the whole card. We're both on the Sadikov side, and we're both on the Shara side. But yeah, main event, we're split right now. But do not be surprised at all if I change my pick to Fiziev. I was starting to lean towards Fiziev. Um, Honestly, Bet Sam gave me a little bit of confidence in Manuel Torres, seeing as he picked him. But yeah, I think this is just a pretty tricky fight night to pick down or break down in general, and I could honestly see myself doing pretty poorly on this one. Um, but if you guys are making picks, if you guys are betting, I wish you guys the best of luck. Um, Shout out Artem MMA for doing this collab with me. This should help me out a little bit. Um, my progress has definitely been slowing a little bit on the channel, but that makes sense. Brand new to this. I post once a week. I do think I want to make a video about the new UFC rankings because those are abysmal. So I think I'll do
Yeah.
a video where I fix the UFC rankings. So stay tuned for that. And then I'm also looking to make some videos where I match make the whole divisions. And then also coming pretty soon here, I do think I'm going to be making some prediction videos for Dana White's Contender Series. So all of that should be coming soon. And I've been teasing it for a couple weeks now, but at some point we'll get on to the recap videos and I'll do the fights to make next as well. Maybe this one will be the one because this will be an early morning Saturday card for me. So I could be able to film a video Saturday and get that one up. But that's gonna do it for me and Artem. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate any and all support that I get on my channel. Any comments, any likes, any new subscribers, greatly appreciated. Um, but that'll do it for me this week. This is a pretty long video, so um, thank you guys if you've made it this far. I doubt very many of you have, but thank you and goodbye.